And we end with a national ICT strategies panel to bring together everything for the industry leaders in this space. We've put together these topics based on our own understanding of the market, obviously, as well as a lot of inputs and insights from you, the audience, from previous conferences, our partners, the sponsors, and so on. And three or four very interesting topics have come up for the first time this summit. As I mentioned yesterday, one was on AI strategies. For the first time, this conference has a full panel on AI. We also had a whole panel on BPO. A lot of African countries are gearing up to offer BPO services for other countries, companies across the region, and also from Europe and Asia and the Americas as well. So that's another interesting panel. For the last two summits, we've also had one on startup ecosystems. We have a huge new pool of entrepreneurs in countries across Africa who want to test their own strength in terms of launching their own products, services, companies. So we have a panel on startup ecosystems. I can see some of the speakers here already. We have a very engaging fireside chat with one of our speakers from the African Union who's going to talk about what it takes to design digital experiences for customer excellence. But first, we have a topic on a very interesting topic. You may have noticed that in the past couple of days, we've had a few women speakers. We need more women speakers, obviously, in the industry. And a lot of the messages coming from the industry have been we need to address very specifically the issue of gender roles in ICTs and can we get more girls in science and tech education? Can we get more women in the science, technology, and the STEM sector, science, tech, engineering, and medicine and mathematics? So we need to focus much more on how to bring women into the workforce, retain them, get them up to leadership positions, and so on. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. This will be discussed in this fireside chat now. Again, this is a format which came up from you, the audience. A few years ago, a couple of you said, more than just keynotes and panels, can we have different kinds of engagement formats? And the idea to have a fireside chat came up from you. So thank you so much for all these ideas for our summits. So we're going to have now a fireside chat on sustainability and diversity. Let me invite our two speakers to come up on stage. We have Omar Bagesh, Director of Spiralytix. Omar, will you please come up on stage? Spiralytix is a digital services aggregator in the financial services area. Will you please come up, Omar? And joining him will be Bethlehem Saifu Shawel, who is an assistant professor at Addis Ababa University. And that again is a suggestion which came from you, the audience, which is please bring more of our academics into the conference. One of the main reasons why the ICT sector has been so successful is there's a very strong, tight linkage between researchers and the ICT industry, between the ICT industry and educators. So that's another good component of what we need to have in these events. So without further ado, please welcome Umar Bagesh from Spiralytix and Professor Bethlehem Shaifu from Addis Ababa University. Over to you both, and we look forward to a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you. A big round of applause, please, for our speakers.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope everybody has a great lunch. My name is Bethlehem, and for today, the chats I think will highlight Omar. He is a few people that in the country that is not well known in pictures, but have a print in any sectors, and from agriculture to tech. So can I give you at least 1 minute to just tell us who Umar is so that we can go to the topics?
Okay. Thank you, Bethlehem. I'm Omar. I'm based in Addis, born and raised. I'm 100% local, and I'm mostly known for many people in the coffee business. But within coffee, I have experience from growing coffee and exporting, roasting. Maybe the local brand you might all know is Tarara. But other than that, I was responsible for establishing several other businesses, including DSTV, Cactus, Pishangari Lodge, and Book World, and Shama Publishing, and other things. So over the last 35 years, I created about 14 businesses in Ethiopia. But now my latest venture that has been going on for the last 5 years is a consultancy business for coffee businesses within the coffee ecosystem. We give advice to businesses that grow coffee, smallholders, and the whole ecosystem. But we take a very technology based approach to solving problems. So sustainability is very key on our uh, agenda, but within sustainability, we address environmental issues and social issues. So it is within the social context that we are going to have a discussion now with Bethlehem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, on the tech sector, one thing, the first question that I wanted to raise to you is we say it is progressing being inclusive environment. And from that perspective, um, can we actually truly measure the progress that we're seeing? Like, do we have a metrics or indexes? If so, can you name at least?
Yes. So uh, women participate in all aspects in Ethiopia, and there are about eight regulations within which I have counted maybe 40 or 50 clauses starting from the Constitution across many regulations that require, diversity and inclusion, particularly for women, to be active within the workforce in Ethiopia. So, from a policy perspective, I think we have good regulations in place. However, I don't think we have measurable, let's say, metrics to measure the performance of women within the workforce in Ethiopia yet. And if it's not measurable, as you would know, then it's difficult to grow and to improve it. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Unless otherwise we can count how many progresses that we are making, it's not possible to tackle the challenges that are associated with it. That being said, I know, and we all know that the tech sector is man dominated. And from that perspective, still the inclusion concept and incorporating the different diversity into this sector is a challenge. And leaders have a critical role to play. So, from that perspective, what do you think leaders can do to create, sustain such truly inclusive workspaces?
Yeah, so when we talk about diversity, we need to contextualize it a little bit to Ethiopia. The idea of DEI, which was very popular, but of late has been completely dismissed as not important in the US. The world tends to follow those general trends, but DEI in the Western context and DEI in Ethiopia could be a little bit different in the sense that Ethiopia is a country of many different ethnicities. It's not just a country of 11 regions, but it's probably a country of more than 80 or 90 different distinct ethnicities. So when we speak of diversity and inclusion, we have to think in these terms in the Ethiopian sense. So what are leaders doing to do this? It's not just a question of policies and regulations, but it's a question of also leading by example and putting, speaking of women in this context, is putting women or people that are of diverse backgrounds from society in leadership positions. The key is to get people to be in a leadership position and also to nurture people from the ground up. So that's probably something that starts in schools, I would say.
It is true.
Yeah.
We have to have a good approach to actually, especially from the leader's perspective, to actually maintain the workforce and making it inclusive for all. One thing that you mentioned is women's being in in leadership position
Mhm.
or in senior positions.
Mhm.
I can share with you one thing. I recently graduated as a PhD student from an Addis Ababa University, and in my institute, and my department has been in the knowing for the last 16, 17 years. And even though that's the case, I will be the second, or I am the second PhD graduate, a woman PhD graduate, specifically in tech related and communication specific field. That tells you the fact how thinner it gets in terms of including women from a lower educational state, from undergraduate state to a higher educational space, into a researcher or postgraduate um, place. So that being said, I also observed the same thing in decision making era, in decision making environment, where we see a lot of women being empowered, being recruited as technicians, but few of them are being pushed, enabled to go to a higher decision making, a senior role. So, what change do we need to do to actually improve the number of women in leadership spaces?
Yeah, so speaking of in the, let's say, in the context of ICT, for example, everything starts with education, and getting in the context of, let's say, example of women, getting women to be part of STEM, for example, to study the sciences right from the beginning, and to nurture them through the system, to get them into engineering and science positions, let's say, is I think one key important component. But having said that, people within public and private, let's say, institutions uh, have to make to embed this idea of empowering women into their SOPs, into their business framework, and to be able to measure it, and to be able to have a goal or a plan of saying we want the workplace to be diverse, not just in terms of gender, but in all other contexts. As you said, people can have an unconscious bias, and so that has to be checked. So within large, and this can be only be implemented in large settings more than small businesses, let's say. But large businesses will have to create frameworks that will take into account the diversity of the country, consider the need to empower women, and to introduce training and mentorship, and above all, sponsor women and push them up the ladder, and to see to it that they reach to a position of leadership. Yes.
I think sometimes we undermine the effect of mentorship and sponsorship as to uplift women and the success of women in the ICT and the tech sector. Before I invite the audience here for more questions and to join us in our conversation, I would have one last question, and
Sure.
regarding um, to give, we have different decision maker or leaders in here. From that perspective, what can we give them, or what can you give them as actionable advice to make a meaningful change in inclusion and diversity in the tech sector?
Yes. So in terms of people who are in position to create policies, I think the most important thing is to embed the need to let's say to empower women within the workforce, is to have the policies have to be there. They have to be measurable. Companies and businesses, large, let's say, state-owned enterprises or government institutions, have to have a target of what they want to achieve and when they want to achieve it, and incentives have to be put in place. So people have to be incentivized. There should be some kind of, you know, a score that, let's say, institutions will get as a result of including, let's say, women into the workforce, women into leadership. So one of the metrics is the people themselves have to be able to give feedback. Including someone or getting him into the institution is one thing, but making them feel heard, and that they don't fear to speak out, and that they feel welcome in that environment, being somebody of, let's say, a minority background, or someone from a diverse or a minority background in Ethiopia. So people have to feel comfortable and to feel welcome, and they have to not fear to speak out. And ultimately, the let's say the policymakers have to see to it that there is an incentive for private sector and government to do this, let's say, initiative. it has to be incentivized.
Thank you. I guess we can open the questions for.
Yeah. Any questions, comments from the audience? Yes, please. Fantastic.
So mine is not a question. Mine is a comment. I'd like to urge all the people who are key decision makers in here. First of all, how many women are in the management sector in their companies here? By show of hands. I'm happy to see that there are at least 7, 8 women. I'd like to urge people, if you're a key decision maker in your company, please make sure that you have a woman either in your board or on your management level. It's very important to note that women in STEM have taken a very bold step. More so if you are my age or upper, more than me, we've taken a bold step to do the STEM courses and be able to come out, because the STEM courses mainly are done by men. We have to stop that and encourage even our children at home to take up the STEM courses. I work for a company where 70% in the management team are women. And I'm proud to say that even the CEO is a woman. So let's take up this challenge and put the women up. Women can do it, and we have done it. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's a great suggestion to have women on the board of directors as well. Question, comments, responses to that?
Can we
Oh,
take
yeah.
a couple of
Wow,
questions?
so many questions. Yeah, please get busy. Yeah. Yeah, in the front here first. Oh, no, she had a hand up first. Yes. Yes.
Hello. Thank you for your question, my sister. So, those of you that know me and those of people who've been in tech with me over the last decade or so know that when we used to have these big meetings in big ballrooms, there were only 2 women in the room. It was me from the private sector and Wazir Addis, who was the chief information officer for Ethio Telecom. Literally, there was a ballroom full of men, and it was only the 2 of us. So the 2 of us felt there was a need to start the Girls Can Code project. And so we started Women in Tech Ethiopia and Girls Can Code. So always when we have these meetings, you'll see me go to the back of the room to do a head count. So I've done it for the morning sessions and afternoon sessions yesterday, and the morning and afternoon sessions today. And I actually shared the numbers with both Bethlehem and Omer today. So now after lunch, we have 26 women in the room. Because my sister asked, we actually know how many of those 26 women are in management. So you said 7 or 8 women raised their room. So thank you for giving the challenge to not just the women, but for the men. And I just wanted to thank Omar for saying that this is not going to happen organically. There have to be government incentives and frameworks and a concerted effort and an intentionality that has to come with making sure that women are not just visible, not just hired within the company, but mentored and sponsored into positions of leadership. So thank you.
Fantastic. Please share those numbers with us also. We'd love to share it with a broader network. Thank you. We had another hand up over here. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Neva from Construction Management Association. I have one question about women workforce and empowering. That empowering women is in any direction is it is a good way in developing. But when women's in knowledge, skill, and best leading, is it better than empowering or quota driven for a certain position? Because we want to ask our skill and leading skill by taking a quota. What do you say for this?
Okay, let's hold that. Any more questions? We can take just one last comment. Yeah, Nick Kaseri, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Omar mentioned the diversity of Ethiopia. And I think that in conversations such as this, to limit it to the gender, men and women, becomes a little, too narrow. Framework to look at issues of inclusion. So where you have many ethnic minorities and the distribution of national resources depends on the access of each of the groups, to the centers of power. How do you actually manage, inclusion, taking account of the gender issues and also the need for building a very cohesive workforce drawn from all segments of the society, include both sectarian and also
Great. Thanks. That's a great suggestion. I think next time we'll have minorities of different countries, also those issues addressed. Quick questions, responses to those questions, comments?
Okay. Yes. So thank you for the two questions. I think the two questions are a little bit related because the gentleman said, would a quota system work, for example? Because when you come to the issue of inclusion, there's always the issue of whether quotas should supersede or whether competence or merit should supersede. So this is a very philosophical question but it requires judgment and wisdom. It's if let's say a person who is somehow challenged in some physical way applies. I think there is a term for it which I don't remember, but humanity-based HR policies also are being implemented in many situations. So some people have to be given an advantage to rise within an organization or to get an opportunity. So a strict quota system will not be exactly applicable, but there should be some kind of ratio or some kind of encouragement to get the ratio of, let's say, in the case of women, it's not just women, but it's also disabled people have to get an opportunity to work within the workforce. And as I mentioned to you, in the case of Ethiopia, Ethiopia is a country of very wide diversity. So the term diversity in Ethiopia has far-reaching definitions than the DEI diversity, the Western definition of DEI, let's say. So including people from the fringes and making sure that they get an opportunity in urban areas, in the city, in Addis, in private sector, in civil society and government, I think is critical. So this needs to be government-led, and as mentioned earlier, diversity and inclusion is not something that happens by accident. It has to be planned and it has to be executed as part of a framework that some agency or the government at large has to be participating in something like this. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Would you like to respond and wrap up the discussion?
Thank you.
as
I
well?
think just to respond to the gentleman there raised and regarding to the quota, the thing that I hear most of the time is that in leadership, people say, I wish I can recruit some women in my leadership thing, but they're not compatible, like competent enough. And I hear we would be happy to recruit women's or students from rural areas, but they're not competent enough to do so. Who is going to give them the chance to be competent? Someone has to do the step to give an opportunities, to give trainings, to give mentorship, so that they would be good enough for the roles we intend to give them. So the good thing is inclusion is not a one-person job. Everyone is on the table, from the government to the social society. Everyone has a responsibility to give a real opportunity for women and to create true inclusive environment. As Omar says, inclusivity is not for the gender. We have different marginal societies that we have to think of. So that's the
Fantastic. A big round of applause, please, to Omar and Bethlehem for a fantastic fireside chat on the very important issue of diversity. And thanks to our speakers in the audience for expanding the definition of diversity. Will both of you please come up here for a photograph? Once again, a big round of applause, please, for Omar and Bethlehem. Next time, we will have a full panel and maybe a full conference on this topic, I think. So many good ideas coming out of the summit. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Once again, a big round of applause. Let's have more chairs added up on the stage as we move on to our next very important panel section. This one is on wealth and inclusion, redefining financial services. Let me invite Henok Shafino to please come up on stage. He's the Market Implementation Director for Ethiopia at MasterCard. Let me invite Dr. Neol Edisu, please come up on stage. Tech Advisor to the Governor, National Bank of Ethiopia, Safarik, and also joining him will be Elsa Mussolini, Chief Digital Financial Services Officer at Safaricom. So all of you, will you please come up on stage? Thanks. I'll be running this session for the next 45 minutes. I'm sorry, for the next half an hour. And we're going to run through different issues of inclusion, strategy, technology, and so on. So we have three panelists over here. I have a few questions for them, but as usual, I want to encourage questions from you in the audience. So my first question will be for Henok. Henok, can you tell us a little bit about the underserved, underbanked populations of Ethiopia and how you're serving them through MasterCard?
Thank you. Again, my name is Henok Shfarrao, looking after community pass programs in Ethiopia. So it's a very interesting question, Doctor. When discussing about underserved and unbanked populations in Africa in general, we have lots of challenges here we need to address. So as MasterCard, we're having a strong strategy to overcome these challenges. Not only that, but we have lots of platforms which is currently designed to overcome these challenges. I can mention one of our digital platform called Community Pass. The Community Pass is currently expanding the digital and financial inclusion and creating digital infrastructure for underserved and underbanked populations in Africa. We're offering, digital identity, transaction profiles, and also we're providing offline capabilities for our societies in Africa. It's not only, community passes providing access to finance or, we're building infrastructure. We also have a very strong strategy that we're implementing across Africa. It's called Med Alliance. It's Mobilizing Access for Digital Economy Alliance. We have partnered in collaboration with FDB, African Development Bank. So we are within this alliance providing digital access for critical services in Africa, and we're ambitioning to reach 100 million users in 10 years. So these two critical strategies are what we have placed as a strategy to overcome to overcome those challenges to underserved communities. Perhaps it's going to be very fair to mention about a few of those challenges. So, underserved and banked populations have lots of challenges here. 60% of sub-Saharan Africa, they're still offline, and 30% still, don't have a digital identity. Not only that, I work myself as a farmer sometimes, so if you go to rural areas, that is mainly designed for rural areas to serve those underserved. And there's a big problem when it comes to infrastructure. There is no network connectivity. There is a risk on financial or money theft and everything. So this is why we're here as Community Pass to really provide a better solution for our communities. So what is the result would be another thing which I can align with the strategy. So at this point in time, as we're expanding big through our Community Pass platform, we have reached 4.5 million users in Africa, including Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. And we're not to our growth, and we're expanding our market to Nigeria and Ghana in a very near future. The other thing is, as a strategy, I would like to mention about our strategic talks when it comes to collaboration. So we're collaborating with EcoBank, with Cooperative Bank of Kenya, and also with development partners like Pfizer International to make sure that we're providing digital access for smallholder farmers. We're providing, access to financial services and everything. And we're digitizing the overall agricultural value chains across this continent. It's not only about, this as well. We also partnered with Cooperative Bank of Kenya in Ethiopia, launching Community Pass, and at this point in time, we're having about 500,000 smallholder farmers registered to our platform, and this is one strategy which we're ambitioning to really put in place. The last thing maybe to address this thing is we're ambitioning big, and we believe Med Alliance and partnership with African Development Bank is going to be really big in Africa, and we're going to provide digital access for critical services. So it's not only for individuals, but also for businesses. And lastly, as MasterCard, we're highly expanding our footprint in this period, in this time. At the same time, we're also committed to really support driving digital and financial infrastructure in East Africa, in Africa too. So this could be what we strategize as MasterCard, and we're going to do it over. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hinok, for that very broad overview of the very impressive numbers, your partners, and the markets that you're in. Let's turn now to Elsa. Elsa, tell us a bit more about mobile money and where it's going today. We had a very good fireside chat yesterday with Wim, and he talked about how mobile is becoming the center of the lifestyle, of the economy, of society, and so on. And a lot of stuff is going through mobile money, mobile transactions, and so on. So tell us a little bit about mobile and money.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon to everyone. So first to our previous topic, M-Pesa is present in 6 countries. 3 of the CEOs are women, including of myself. So I think as M-Pesa in Africa, we'll achieve parity in terms of M-Pesa CEO position. About mobile money is interesting. Launched first in Kenya in 2007, we believe it has significantly transformed the way we transact in Africa. By introducing competition to the banks, by accelerating the bank's transformation to the digital space, we have actually contributed to leapfrog by so many ways what took much more time in all the parts of the world. So we believe as mobile money that we still have a very important role to play. There is further transformation that we want to pioneer. We see two main trends on the top of. Initially, mobile money was mostly to do peer-to-peer remittance. That was the past. Today, all the mobile money, as well with the bank, move to bill payment, move to microloan, secure, not collateralized with the title of property and what, but based on smart credit scoring that actually give us the confidence that we can give you that small loan that can transform the business. Digital saving is a behavior that mobile money should transform. I should be able to simply save every time I do a small transaction, put a bit of money on side for my wedding, for going to the university. This is again, using the phone, using mobile money, we made those products simpler and more easily accessible. From a broader perspective, we also see that the financial landscape has still a lot of deep transformation that will happen. We see all what is happening in the world around cryptocurrency, blockchain. How can mobile money support the transformation of technology that support the ecosystem? We also see our AI application of AI on customer experience, fraud detection is a fantastic area where, as mobile money, we want to play a role and we want to lead.
Fantastic. That's a great overview again, Elsa. Let's turn now to Dr. Neol. You're from the National Bank of Ethiopia. What are you guys doing with digital banking to increase the banking footprint?
Thank you, Madam. Yes, I am from National Bank of Ethiopia, but as it is customary, whatever I say, opinion implied or expressed is my own as a professional, should not be construed as a policy or a stand by the institution. At the National Bank as well as in general in Ethiopia, right? We've had a number of significant, important initiatives and strategies from Digital 2025, National Financial Inclusion Strategy 1, and now we're working on National Strategy 2. The Digital Transformation Council, which was established last year, is driving some of the changes. So in National Bank of Ethiopia, Mint, INSA, Ethio Telecom, AI Institute, FIDA, National ID, all these institutions as well as strategies crafted by the government are creating conducive environment for explosive growth of national digital transaction as well as digital financial services. However, as service providers, MasterCard as well as Safaricom and industry at large, I have a question or a challenge. I think we should look at beyond inclusion. Inclusion, the word itself comes with the excluder is being asked a favor to include. That should not be the case. We have to make the case such that diverse environment as well as having more participate in the ecosystem is a business proposition. It's not a favor. Anyone being asked. As any service provider, having more to participate in the ecosystem is business imperative. So inclusion, I think we should look beyond inclusion. We should look for full participation by everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks. In the interest of time, I'll maybe keep just one or two more questions for the panel and leave it open to the audience to ask a few more. My next question again is for Henok. Henok, what trends are you observing this year? Technology trends, maybe business models, regulations, etc., that will enhance financial services in the future?
Thank you. We have seen lots of good trends in our continent, in East Africa and Ethiopia as well. I may mainly mention about the two things, which is one emerging technology and the other one is the regulatory framework. So, for example, also I can mention about the mobile connectivity and infrastructure. So this is a very good trend that we can observe in our continent. The connectivity is growing big time. The infrastructure is growing big time. Everywhere you go, we're at least seeing, people affording smartphones and somehow using this. So this really opens a big room for our digital inclusion, financial inclusion. So that I can tell. And randomly, in some numbers in 2023, around 835 million people in Africa are users of mobile money or registered. So this is one a very good thing that I can mention about our continent. I also can mention about the fintech innovations in Africa, the startups, the financial institutions, and all other fintechs and other companies are now highly investing in the fintech innovation is highly increasing. So you can see on mobile money, digital lending, microcredits, insurance related services provided by those stakeholders. So this is the second thing that I can mention. The regulatory framework is something also that I can mention in Africa, but to be very specific about Ethiopia, if you refer it, the Digital Ethiopia 2025 strategy, we have seen a strong momentum after we launched this strategy. The market is opening up. So, there's still cause, there is, also something that we're expecting to enter into market. So this regulatory framework is somehow very flexible these days, and it's opening up opportunities for, companies, stakeholders who wants really to contribute for the digital and financial inclusion. I also can mention about blockchain and AI. So I think yesterday the first panel was all about AI. So I'm not going to mention about it, but that is now the new critical word in our society. So that also can take a critical part here. I also can mention about the digital ID initiative. So if you see in Ethiopia, we're passing 10 million digital ID users. We're pushing this thing big time accordingly. The banks are highly using it. Now it's going to be a very, important, form of identification for Ethiopian people. And it's also something that needs to be adopted across the rest of East Africa. And maybe the last two things I can mention about is, a collaboration. You see now there is strategic collaboration between telcos, government, financial institutions, and everyone. If you mention, if I can say a little bit example about what we did as Mastercard, we're collaborating with lots of banks. We have issued the first virtual card with Dashen Bank. We're trying to partner with Dashen and Axion. We're having a special partnerships with Awash and the rest of the banks. Also, Community Pass is also expanding its footprint in Ethiopia. And we're going to really join lots of social impact, lots of programs which will really create sustainable impact in our society. And the last one is as MasterCard, our strategy. That's very key. So we want to contribute to play a force for good in all markets that we operate. So, having the whole trend that I have mentioned earlier, we have the ambition or we pledge to really address or to serve 1 billion users within this digital economy globally. And that's what we're ambitioning on the way forward. So this is what I really see as a very good trend in the whole Africa, specifically in Ethiopia as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks so much, Henok. I'm glad you mentioned regulatory issues. My next question for Elsa is, as CEO of M-Pesa, How do you see the regulatory framework in African countries? What more could be done to speed up the uptake of mobile financial services? Maybe what are your tips for the regulators in the audience from other countries on how to create a better regulatory ecosystem for mobile money, mobile payments?
So the regulator obviously a very important role to play to make sure the rules are fair for all the players, and also to provide and support innovation. And I think in Ethiopia in particular, I believe we have a very progressive regulator coming with like a lot of design to push interoperability, to push innovation with sandbox approach. So I believe in terms of best practice, what is happening in terms of regulatory in Ethiopia is an opportunity for a player like M-Pesa, and I believe also for the banking institution. So that's.
Great, thanks. How about you in your case, Neil? How is the regulatory landscape and are you working with other kinds of partners, maybe even startups in this space?
Um, yes, I think in the past 3 or 4 years, right, we all know the payment instrument related directives, right? We didn't have those for a long time, even though the fintech activities and innovation were thriving. However, we didn't have any regulatory framework. But in the past 2 3 years, we've accelerated the speed with which directives are issued, so that to provide the environment. And as my colleague mentioned, we are establishing a regulatory sandbox for fintech as well as the capital market. I would say we just launched the QR code standard, which did accelerate further. Uncollateralized loans. We are looking into providing a great regulatory directive to ensure proper service. So there is a concerted effort, not only at the national bank, but also nationally from government for financial access to all. And we are actively working with the industry and organizations to ensure we have a playing field for participants and participants in the ecosystem.
Great, thanks. I got one more question because just a few minutes left, and I want all of you to jump in with your question answers. I sort of from this side with you, Neil. We've got a full house over here, and many people have come from other countries, the parts of Africa as well. What can the audience reach out to you for in terms of ideas, insights, resources, partnerships? You tell me.
I will see you next year at ADT at same place. The same place. I'm just kidding. Anyone can reach me at our office as well. We are open. Just walk in. We can be accessible. LinkedIn. That's the only social network I am on. And I'll be happy to shake hands. I'll be happy to connect with everyone, and I get a chance to learn from each and every one of you. So feel free to contact me in one of those ways.
Fantastic, thanks. Elsa, in your case, what can people reach out to you and Safaricom for? How can you help them in their digital strategies?
So on M-Pesa in particular, so at minimum three things. First, we have launched an open API layer. We already have 1,000 developers connected, started to use our API. So we want, as M-Pesa, that every startup or SME that want to collect digitally is able, without having to come to see us, to actually connect by itself using our API on our open platform. So I think this is very important. There's still a lot to do to actually create more startups, more fintechs in Ethiopia. And I think this open layer is a critical enabler for fintech industry and startup, generally speaking, to collect and transact digitally. The second aspect is there is no big fintech and big mobile money business that doesn't come with partnership. So there is a lot of partnership. If we look at what we have done in Kenya, like SME startup who have grown with M-Pesa in Kenya, it's the same thing that we want to achieve here. There is strong partnership that we can do with your business, and that we can do some kind of incubation so that we can grow together around an idea that makes sense for the both of us. And thirdly, we believe also that there is a lot of there's a lot of topics where we could co-design, where we could work together to accelerate fintech industry in Ethiopia. I believe that we still don't have enough fintech in this country. I see a future in 5 or 6 years where for the few main aggregator on this market, we can really build that vibrant fintech industry that will bring solution, that will bring innovation, as innovation cannot come from one or two players. It comes from an ecosystem, and that's what we would love to discuss. For the people who are in the room, with my team that is present, we are open for partnership and we are willing to innovate together.
An open API for developers across Africa. That calls for a round of applause, please. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Henok, you already talked about a lot of partnerships that you have in place. What else can the people reach out to you for?
Very good one. So we believe at Mastercard through our Community Pass platform, we're making smallholder farmers, the underserved, underbanked, and unbanked populations that was invisible from a financial system, now very visible and opening up the room to be, to include them as part of the digital informal economy. We really believe that it is a critical element for our population to thrive and survive. That's why we are highly working towards implementing our community based strategies here in Africa mainly. We're addressing, 4.5 million users in Africa. So strategic collaboration is very key. We're very open really to work towards, this agenda and to really create a sustainable impact to change smallholder farmers and those underserved populations. So as I mentioned earlier, Community Pass is really designed for remote communities or so for those underserved communities who live in rural areas. So we're very open and driving this partnership. And maybe one thing to add up here is anyone who really have this ambition to take part in supporting our smallholder farmers. Our platform is serving again as force for good, aggregating harvest projection, the yield collection, we're digitizing the buyer order management, the transactions starting from smallholder farmers up to the buyer level, including the middlemen, and we're really having a very open loop model that any party can come in and entertain. So this is our ambition. If I start telling you about the smallholder farmers problem, I might need the one full day. So I'm not going to touch it, but access to finance is very critical for them. Proof of transaction, proof of identification is another critical tool for our farmers. So that we launched Community Pass to serve as a digital ID, transaction profile, and it can also operate with an offline capability. So anyone, please feel free really to partner with us. We're here not only, our aim is even beyond the financial gains. We want to impact, we want to create sustainable impact, and that's what we really ambition with. And Meta Alliance is also something that we're looking at a very, very, very big elephant that we want to crack here. So this is what I can say for this big audience, and thank you.
Fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned agriculture so many times. We have a speaker from the Agricultural Transformation Institute who's going to be speaking later on this afternoon as well. And I like all the numbers our panelists have been throwing out. It's always millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. That's what digital can do. It can take impact scale across the whole continent. We have just a few minutes left, but I really want to keep questions from the audience. And I think, Kasirim, can we get a mic in the front, please? One question here. And any other questions? Yes, I see one more hand there. So we can take two questions and three questions and then wrap up. Yeah, Kasirim.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. In some cases, we have the issue of unintended consequences of good faith action. In Ethiopia in 2020, before the demonetization exercise, changing,
Can you put the mic a bit closer? Yeah.
Before the change of the color of the currency, the amount of money outside the banking system was about 109 billion. And then after that, the government introduced, digital transactions, e-money, and or whatever you had to use, telebill or whatever. And now you have the amount of currency outside the banking system at 2.17 trillion dollars. 2.17 trillion, 109 billion in 2020. Now, what could be driving this? It would be the restrictions on the amount of cash that you can withdraw. So what you can see here is that in some cases, the introduction of technology is leading to some degree of disintermediation in the system as a whole, where people don't want to use the financial system, And then, so when we talk about unbanked population, some people are unbanked by choice, and not because there are, restrictions to access in financial institutions. So, what policy interventions do you think should accompany the introduction of digital technologies in improving access to financial services? Because even when you have so much money, 2.17 trillion outside the banking system, that's a problem. When you also have high inflation, and then you have the restrictions on withdrawable amounts, most people will not want to keep their money in the bank because inflation erodes the value of the money. Anyway, that's the question I have.
Okay, good. Let's hold that question. Let's get the second question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I am Alaf Skander, CEO of AZ Technologies. So I want to forward my question to Mr. Nao regarding the rapid growth of virtual machines and the digital banking machines. So traditionally, we are using the normal or traditional branches of banks that we are trying to expand banking industry in Ethiopia. But in recent days, the use of virtual banks or machines has been more dominant in other parts of the world. So why are we not seeing it in our country, at least in the urban areas, growing rapidly? And as a law policymaker organ, I want to ask that what are the ethical considerations of if we are going to automate or replace employees in the branch of with virtual machines or banking digital machines? Thank you.
Great. And the last question from here.
Thank you. Just to share my thoughts with you regarding the question you asked on the regulatory framework for mobile ID. So in Mauritius, we launched the mobile ID 2 years ago. All digital electronic transactions are very prevalent in Mauritius, mobile money, online transaction, everything. But when it came to mobile ID, strangely so, people were very apprehensive to take the mobile ID. So we have a population of 1.3 million. Less than 100,000 has taken the mobile ID, which is voluntary, which is not mandatory. Reason being, people are very apprehensive regarding their data privacy. They had the thought that because it's a governmental project, mobile ID, Big Brother would be watching on them, will be tapping into their personal identification online. So this is one example I'm sharing with you, whereby the regulatory framework will be used as a tool to promote innovation in the sense that we are coming up with identity management electronic system based on the UN Central model. Reason being, we give the people the comfort that by using this mobile ID, we are doing it according to the data protection law in Mauritius. So we have to be very careful when it comes to data privacy, personal data. This is one example where regulation will alleviate this fear of breaching data privacy.
Got it. Thanks. Good. So 3 very good comments. We're actually out of time, but I'd like to ask each of you to respond maybe in a minute or so to some of the points raised. Money outside the banking system, training the workforce on AI and tools without loss due to automation, and other issues with digital policies. Any of you can talk. Yeah, start.
I think I'll take maybe perhaps the currency change into 0.57 trillion outside of the banking system. I can't comment on the number, but I'll pose a question back. If it is outside of the banking system, how do we know how much it is? So, but you said some of them by choice may be unbanked, right? I think that's a good point. That keys back to my colleague's suggestion from Mauritius. Government initiatives, there is apprenticeship, right? That might be the reason, and restriction of how much money you can withdraw might play into that. People might be holding some in case they need it. That is not only a policy, but also a liquidity challenge that we have in the country. And in addition, it could be cost as well. We have to look into the cost structure of digital services, right? Most of digital services were free for the first few years. But in the past few months or years, an institution started adding a cost, in some ways less transparent cost. Maybe that is cost avoidance. Again, in addition, delay in transfer also playing into that. Your question about virtual branch, I think that goes back to the existing regulatory framework we have. Drives how many branches you can open depending on the bank's liquidity as well as capacity to handle, and it is permission driven. That might be the reason we have to look at updating or changing the regulatory framework. However, opening a virtual branch versus having a virtual service within an existing branch is possible. Some of the financial institutions employ and deploy that. ATM grows. I have some numbers, even though I would say all statistics are wrong, but most are useful. We continue to use them. ATM adoption is growing, point of sale adoption is growing, but it's not at the rate to address the need, the challenge we have within the country. Again, cost might be an issue for both. That's what I would say.
Thanks.
But
Thanks,
further,
Bill.
we can have offline.
Yeah,
discussion.
there's a coffee break after this. So yeah, Elsa, you can respond to the question either about mobile ID or mobile money regulations. Up to you.
Maybe 2 points. I think on the adoption on financial services, it was to mention trust. I think the user that you described deliberately don't want, I think in most of the case, if you ask, is they don't trust or is not as convenient. Imagine you have to take a taxi during 30 minutes to deposit your cash to a bank branch. Obviously, it's not convenient for you. So I think that as players, in terms of building trust, you see the way we communicate, and I think to some extent it applies to Ethiopia. The way the player communicate about financial services is full of jargon, is not educating the user and making them comfortable. And lastly, maybe security. Are we explaining how secure it is to use digital financial services? And this is part of the trust as well. So I think there's still a lot to do. As you rightly say, maybe whatever is the number, the Ethiopian market is still largely using cash, and even as EBIR, Telebir, M-Pesa are progressing, the bank aggressive, the large majority of that of adults still mostly transact with cash. So that's maybe to a few answer. To the question of AI, I think there is fascinating use case in Ethiopia as a country and for the virtual brand. Imagine with all the diversity, with all the language, as much as maybe you go to a branch, somebody is able to speak one of the language. Imagine if you would need somebody to assist you in another language. AI can potentially help to power and enhance also in branch the human interaction that is happening there. So I think there is a full field on innovation that this industry is going to go through in the next few years. And I think as a player, we are excited to co-design with the other actors.
Thanks, Elsa. I'm glad you brought up the topic of innovation so many times. Henok, you have the last word.
Yeah,
1
maybe
minute.
I have a very quick reflection about the first question. So I believe we're progressing big time. For example, if I refer the time I worked for bank 10 years back and now, we're having a very good progress. But let me stick around community pass. So let's say one smallholder farmer might walk 5 hours to get a bank branch previously, but now at Community Pass, we're working to really resolve such problems, issuing digital e-cards for the farmers so anyone can access their money digitally. So Community Pass is one tool to really resolve the challenges that my colleague has shared earlier. So, I mean, I'm not going to repeat it again. We're, a workforce striving to change the trajectory of our society, and we're everywhere in rural areas. At the end of the day, that's what our ambition is. So we're progressing, and we'll make sure that this social impact will continue in Africa. Thank you.
Fantastic. Noel, Ilsa, and Henok, thank you so much for a fantastic panel. Thanks for all the questions from the audience. And a big round of applause, please, for our three experts on one of the most important frontiers of the digital world. Let's come up here for a group photograph, and then I believe there's an announcement to be made. Yeah. So I believe we have an announcement that's going to be made by the Ministry of Innovation and Technology. So let's have the announcement or a video. Yeah.